From the East Coast horror group, Everything Horror. You guys put your hands together and make some noise for your moderator for the Alice Cooper panel.
All right, so there's every once in a while you get to announce a name on the stage here. It's pretty special. So without further ado, let's bring the man of the hour out, Mr. Alice Cooper.
Turn off that racket.
Love you, Alice!
That ever get old?
No.
Never. So let's start out with a music question. What made you want to pursue a career in the entertainment industry?
I didn't really have a choice. I was 15 years old, and I was painting my house, and it was summertime, and the radio was always on my house. And all of a sudden I heard, "Do-do-do-do, she loves you, yeah, yeah." And I went, what was that? It was the first time I'd ever heard the Beatles. And it was an hour later, I heard Please Please Me, and then I heard I Want to Hold Your Hand. There were like 5, 6 songs in a row that were the best songs I'd ever heard, and I went, well, that's what I want to do. It was either going to do that, or I was going to, it's something in the arts. I was a good creative writer, I was going to do something like that, but that gave me a certain direction. Once I got into rock and roll, then I looked around and said, there's a world of Peter Pans here and no Captain Hook. I need to be that sort of definitive villain of rock and roll. And that's really where Alice Cooper came in.
So talk about the start of the Alice Cooper band.
Well, we were all in high school. We were all actually on the journalism. We were all like journalism. I had a column in my paper. My name was Muscles McNasal because I was skinny, real skinny, and I had a big nose, so they called me Muscles McNasal. And my column was just totally, it didn't make a bit of sense at all, which it wasn't supposed to. And Dennis Dunaway was on the cross-country track team, and he said, you got to come out for cross-country track, so I did. And I didn't know I was a runner. I was a long-distance runner. And the next thing you know, 3 of the original guys were 4-year lettermen. We were all track and cross-country guys, and won the state and everything like that. And we had no thought still of the Beatles. The Beatles came along in my sophomore year, and all of a sudden then, all 3 guys, Dennis said, I want to play bass. John Spears said, I want to play drums. I said, well, I'll be the singer. And that's the very beginnings of Alice Cooper right there. And the very first show we ever did was the Letterman's Club talent show, okay? Where we put wigs on and, the Beatle wigs and all this. And in that show, there was a guillotine on stage. And what a weird thing that would end up still being, there was no reason for the guillotine to be on stage, but it was there. And it kind of, I don't know if it pushed us forward or what, but it ended up being a big part of the show.
Now, other than the Beatles, who were some of your biggest influences?
Well, I was always into music. I was a little kid. I listened to the 50s music, I listened to the Beach Boys and the Four Seasons and, all the great doo-wop bands. My dad was very cool. My dad was a pastor, but he liked rock and roll. So he could tell you any verse in the Bible, and then you could say, who plays guitar for the Yardbirds? And he'd go, Jeff Beck. So that's a pretty cool dad. It's, for somebody that most people think that their dads are, especially pastors, are going to be very anti-rock and roll. He says, I have no problem with the music at all. The lifestyle I have a problem with. Sleeping around, taking drugs, and of course at that time we weren't doing that. We were way too young for that. But later on, he still was really enjoyed what we did on stage,
When was the first time you realized that Alice Cooper, that you really locked onto something and people really got what you were doing?
I think it's when the rejection. I think it's when our first album was reviewed as a tragic waste of plastic. Check the Lester Bangs, I thought that was a great review. We still have that review. And, you know, the only person that got what we were doing was Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa, when you listen to us, everybody else turned us down on every level, every major record company, because they were all looking for the next Buffalo Springfield. They were looking for the next Monkees or whatever. And here we were from Phoenix, and we didn't make any sense at all. You know, Frank Zappa listened to us, and he said, "I don't get it." And I went, that was, you know, immediately I went, "Oh, I'm dead." And he said, "No, you don't understand. I'm Frank Zappa, and if I don't get it, that's good." So I said, "Okay, great." You know, he says, "Yeah, I want to sign you." And still, 2 albums later, nobody got it. Until Bob Ezrin came along and then kind of put all of the insanity into a package that made sense to an audience. You know, Love It to Death came out. That was the album with 18 and Dwight Frye and everything on it. And that was the album that really kind of launched us.
To go from that, and in 1973, $1 Billion Babies was released and reached #1 in both the US and UK. Talk about what that means as an artist to have that, you know, I guess.
It was embarrassing at a point because, you know, when you have your idols, you know, the guys that you really look up to, the Rolling Stones or the Beatles and the Who and all these bands that you learn from, and then you look at the charts and you're #1 and they're #4 and 5 and 6, you kind of go, "Geez, I hope they don't see this." You know, because you don't feel like you belong in that group at all. You know, you haven't really proved yourself yet. You've had one hit. Later on, I think, when you consistently have hit records, and you have people like Bob Dylan talking about you, and you have John Lennon talking about you, and things like that, all of a sudden then you become, everybody has to listen to you then. But that doesn't mean you change and start playing like everybody else. That means you take it as far as you can. It's sort of like climbing out on the limb of a tree. As far out as you can get, you're either going to be a total idiot or a genius. You know, if you fail, you're the worst idiot of all time. If you succeed, oh, he's genius. Bob Dylan, the first time I heard Bob Dylan, I went, "This guy can't sing at all." You know, this guy can't play harmonica. Second time I heard him, I went, "This guy is brilliant." I listened to what he was saying, and I listened to how he was singing it, and I listened to what he was playing on the harmonica, and then I listened to the whole album and went, "Okay, this guy is a genius." You know, it takes, sometimes when you're so far different than anybody else, it takes a while for them to get it, to just get it. And once they got it, then they're addicted. You know.
Now, you created the real stage show of rock and roll. Talk about the evolution of that. You know, all the fans in here, we loved it, embraced it back then. And also talk about some of the critics that you had.
Well, you know, the thing was, I would go to see the Who and the Rolling Stones, and they were great. I mean, terrific. Mick Jagger, how do you beat that? The guys made Pete Townsend, you know, with the windmill thing. He was probably the epitome of what the spirit of rock and roll. Keith Moon. But I looked at it and I said, there's a gigantic empty canvas on it. To me, you had all this theatrical music and nothing visual. And I said, well, why can't you do that kind of music and then make it come alive on stage? If you say, "Welcome to my nightmare," give them the nightmare. Don't just talk about it. Give them the nightmare. How do you do that? Well, we have to, first of all, it's going to have to be a bed on stage. And if it was a nightmare, what would be happening? The bed would be tilted this way, it certainly wouldn't be flat. There would be things under the bed, because when you're having nightmares, there's always things under the bed, only this time they were real dancers who came out from under the bed. So, you know, we produced it to be a full-out nightmare. And it was like a real roll of the dice. We had no idea if anybody's going to like this or not. We thought, you know, once again, you're either going to be a moron or you're going to be, you know, really regarded as something totally new. But it worked. You know, people liked the album first, and then they weren't expecting the show. When they saw the show, they were just like, "Geez, what is that?" You know.
Talk about some of the criticisms, obviously, in the 70s. You know, things did you have a lot of it?
Yeah, you know, people would first talk about the show, and I don't think they listened to the music at all. I think people were missing the fact that the music was the cake. The theatrics was the icing on the cake. If you didn't have the music to back it up, you had nothing. You know, if you went to an Alice Cooper rehearsal, if it was 10 hours, 8 hours would be on the music. It would be 8 hours of these guys nailing these songs, and so that the audience gets, oh, okay, I really get what you're saying. Then you put the theatrics on top of that, and then you have something that's really incredible. Because you see the whole package. I've seen theatrical bands that are really theatrical and really fun to watch, but you listen and you go, there's nothing there, there's no music there, there's nothing to back it up. So you have to have those lyrics and the songs that people walk away going, oh man, I'm a Mr. Nice Guy, I love that song. Or, you know, Ballad of Dwight Fry, that was with the Straight Jacket, I love that song. They have to love the songs first before they love the band.
So you've written a large number of concept albums. Do the concept albums tend to be planned, or do you just get in the writing crew?
You know, I start with the title. I always start with the title. If you're going to say Along Came a Spider, you know, what was that spider? What did that represent? To me, he was a serial killer. And he left his, you know, he sort of left his victims wrapped in silk, you know, and with a body part missing, you know, because he was building his own thing, but it wrapped everything in silk. And finally somebody picked up on it and went, this guy's a spider. This guy thinks he's a spider because that's his modus operandi, you know. And so when you have that, now you can write all these great songs about how he thinks, why he would do this, what makes him do this. Does you know, you can go psychologically in it, you can be funny, because there's certain songs on that album that are really funny. You know, same thing with Brutal Planet, same thing with Dragon Town, or The Last Temptation. From the inside, there's always a lot of drama, a lot of comedy, and a lot of horror.
I heard the late David Bowie once say in an interview that he didn't want to be a human jukebox. Now, do you ever tire of playing the same songs, or are you just so excited that your fans are excited?
You know, I think I asked him about that one time. I had dinner with him and a couple of other big sci-fi writers, and I said, why wouldn't they, if an audience is coming to see you, don't think they want to hear your songs? You know, I mean, I know that when we do 25 songs on stage, 20 of them are going to be songs that the audience wants to hear. They want to hear $1 Billion Babies and School's Out and 18 and Poison and Only Women Bleed, all the songs that were hits. I said, then you have 5 or 6 songs that you can bring in that are the deeper cuts that to satisfy yourself. But come on, they're paying all this money to hear those songs that they are in love with. You know, if I went to see the Rolling Stones and they did all new songs, that's not why I went to see them. You know, I wanted to hear the songs that made me connect to them. So I have no trouble doing all those songs. Each show, though, we try to find a different way to do that song. We try to package that song a little bit differently. You know, this year with Elected, it was pretty easy. we had Trump and Hillary come out. You know, I don't know if you've seen the show, but, you know, they come out at the end of Elected, and they shake hands, you know, and I said, okay, well, great. And she turns around and he pinches her on the ass, you know, and she goes like that and smacks him, and they fight, and then they look at each other, and then she falls down in a great big kiss, you know, and the audience goes crazy. They love it. She gets up and beats him to death, and he beats her to death. Nobody wins. You know, like the election, nobody wins. But the audience got the, you know, the satire. And in the end, all I had to do was step on the podium and just go. Choice. Now we have shirts out there that say, "Don't blame me. I voted for Alice." I don't think we could have won either way, either election. You know, I don't think we could have won either. Well, but you know, I say give the guy a chance. You know, if she would have won, I would have said give her a chance. You know.
So you've written a lot of songs for films. Which one are you particularly proud of?
You know, there's 2 songs that we wrote for Monster Dog that we wrote them in Spain, and they were 2 songs that I'm really seriously considering redoing. because we didn't really give him a chance. That movie was one of those movies. It was the first thing I did sober. Okay, I came out of the hospital and I had to decide, how am I able to work sober? And so Shep and I decided, well, we'll take this movie in Spain. They promised it was only going to be released in the Philippines, you know. And of course it got released everywhere. Monster Dog, and it was me playing a real straight character part, where I had to be there every morning at 6 o'clock, in full out thing, had to know my lines and everything like that. And then we had to write 2 songs for it. And we wrote these 2 songs that I'm really kind of attached to. Never have done them on stage, but I'm really thinking seriously they might make me on the next album. But the deal about this movie was, after we did the whole movie, the whole cast was British or American, filmed in Spain. And we got the print back, I'm in the States by now, the whole thing, and I turn it on and I'm driving along in the van, and all of a sudden I go, hey, what's going on over here? They overdubbed my voice in some truck driver from, Spain. Everybody in the whole movie got overdubbed. And it was the most ridiculous overdubbing I'd ever heard in my life. I said, do I sound like that? It was hysterically funny. Because we all spoke English, and they made it sound like we didn't speak English. But still, the movie was one of those great turkeys. If you go and check World's Greatest Turkeys, I'm in 3 of them. Yeah. Sergeant Pepper. Yay. I took that movie so I could work with George Martin. George Martin's producing, yeah. I get to sing with George Martin, yeah. Okay, I'm in. And I get to beat up the Bee Gees. There you go. How can you pass that up?
Another film you were in was Wayne's World.
Yeah.
Talk about working on that film.
Well, the Wayne's World thing was funny because, Michael's an old friend of mine. And when I got there, I was just supposed to do the song, Feed My Frankenstein. And they come back, And he says, on the way here I wrote something. He says, you can handle some lines, right? I go, yeah, I'm an actor, I can handle the lines. And he hands me about 20 pages. And I go, what is this? And he goes, those are the lines. I said, okay, when are we shooting this? He said, about 20 minutes. So about half of the things I was saying in the thing, I was just making it up as I went along. Every take was a different set of things. Now, what you didn't see was Dana and Mike, when they're doing the We're Not Worthy thing, that went on for about 8 minutes. And it got vile. It got really dirty. I don't know who owns the outtakes for that. But, that movie was really fun to do. When you're doing movies like that, it's not really work. It's just having fun with it, And working with Mike Myers and those guys, they're the best.
So it was almost like not taking yourself too serious.
Oh no, the whole idea that the band sounded like Jeopardy, guys. They knew everything about everything. And the funny thing is these guys actually are like that. You can ask the guitar player about, environment in South America, and they'll say, oh yeah, well, the average temperature down there. The guys in my band are very, very smart guys.
How did your appearance on The Muppet Show come about, and did you ever get a Muppet in your likeness?
Yes, actually they did do one for me. But when I got offered The Muppet Show was #1 show in the entire world. Not just in America, in the world. Because it wasn't white people making fun of black people, or red people making fun. It was, the people were purple. And and they weren't real people, and they were allowed to make fun of each other, so it wasn't a racism kind of thing at all. I got the offer, and I went, I watch this show every week, and I love it, it's great. But, I've just established this horror image of myself, and I don't want to water it down by doing the Muppets, And I said, who did the last 4 shows? And they said, Christopher Lee, Vincent Price. I said, I'm in. I'm in. And when you get there and you do the show, they shot it in London, and we spent a week rehearsal down there. You get so used to talking to the Muppets as people, that they become people. And I'll be sitting there, with Miss Piggy here, and we're rehearsing, and without thinking, I'm going, it would be funnier if you put your head on my shoulder, and we would do. And she, oh, that's a good idea. And you'd go for a half an hour talking to this hand. It's Miss Piggy, and you really are buying into it. And Kermit's coming along going, hey, you guys are getting along pretty well. I said, hey, she's coming on to me, okay? Got little hoof prints all over me. She was a kid. But I had never had so much fun doing anything in my life as the Muppets, you can imagine. Even the rehearsals were hysterically funny. But they were hard work. You really had to learn the dance moves. And you're dancing with these gigantic Muppets. If you get in their way, they'll knock you over. I mean, But it was with Jim Henson and Frank Oz. It was all the original guys, So I really count that as one of the best things we ever did was the Muppet Show.
So in Decline of Western Civilization Part 2, you got bleeped out while saying the initials
Yes.
of someone that might have copied you.
Well, it wasn't might have copied me, and I can tell you who it was, even though we're friends now. Blackie Lawless. It was like we were at that time. All these bands were coming out, and Wasp was. I'd see their show, and I said, "That's not like our show. That is our show." He was doing exactly all the same things I was doing on stage, but it was them doing it. And so it wasn't professional, but I did take a shot at it on that one. I never thought Ozzy Osbourne did what Alice did. I never thought what, Kiss did was what Alice did. We all approached it in our own different style. It was rock and roll, but like Kiss were for comic book characters. Ozzy was his own type of insanity. Alice was sort of the Phantom of the Opera somewhere in there. So we never stepped on each other's toes, really. But when there was a band that was going exactly what we were doing, then it just got under my skin a little bit. But we're friends after that, and he's totally changed the show into other things. But at the time, it was irritating.
I always thought King Diamond might have been.
King Diamond again was, the European thing was always had its own twist to it, and the Alice Cooper thing was never satanic. See, there was never upside down crosses on my stage.